Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, July 11th Board of County Commissioners meeting. We do begin our meetings with an invocation, and today we have Jeff Anderson with Congressman Lamborn's office and Bibles of the World here to lead us in our invocation. Please join if you would like.
Well, good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for your service in our community. Thank you for your friendship. And then thank you for even this invocation, no matter what faith background you're coming from. We really appreciate that you are looking for supernatural wisdom in leading our community. I'd like to refer to Isaiah chapter 61 in our invocation this morning, just one verse. It says, "You have been a shelter for me, a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in your tabernacle forever. I will trust in the shelter of your wings. Oh, prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve us." Lord, today we thank you that you have been a shelter for us, that you have been a stronghold, a fortress, a deliverer. We thank you even for the beauty of this day. We thank you for the blue skies. We thank you for the sunshine, the mountains. Thank you that the green growth is a reminder of all of your goodness and provision for us. We thank you for the rains that have been so helpful to us this year. We thank you, Lord, that that's been a blessing for our farmers and our ranchers in our county. It's helped with our forests. And Lord, it certainly puts our firefighters in a better place. And so we thank you for that. Lord, today as we begin this meeting, we pray for our county. We pray especially for our county workers, whether it's our sheriff's deputies. We pray, Lord, for first responders and firefighters. We pray for those that are serving our county and the health department. And then we pray, Lord, for these commissioners that you'll direct and guide them, bless them. We pray that you'll keep those that are working on our roads today, that you'll protect them from any dangers. And Lord, we confess that we need you as a shelter to protect our community and to bless our community. We pray for wonderful provision. We pray for new businesses to continue to come into our community. We pray that you'll preserve us and protect us from the evils of human trafficking and drug addiction and just so many other things that are such a danger to us. And finally, Lord, we pray that at the most basic level, you'll strengthen our families. We pray, Lord, for our marriages, our families, our children. We pray that our families, as a source of our community and society, Lord, that they would be strengthened and that you'll preserve and bless them as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Commissioner Gonzalez, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items, and there are none.
Item 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. I'm aware of one change to the agenda today. There was a request by the applicant to continue item number 13 to a date certain of August 1st, which will require a motion and vote by the board. And then our next meeting will be Tuesday, July 18th at 9 a.m.
Okay, thank you. So a motion will be needed to continue item number 13 to a date certain of August 1st that was put forth by the applicant. Is there any discussion?
I move that item 13 be moved to a date certain of August 13th. Is that the right date? Sorry.
First.
August 1st.
Second.
And oh, okay, if you got it,
That
we're
has
good.
been moved and seconded. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. We will hear item number 13 on August 1st. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar, inclusive of items 5A through 5P6, with one clerical correction from staff for item number 5M. The resolution's been provided to the board, but for item number 5M, the resolution has a couple of corrections towards the bottom of the page in the account lines. So under recognized revenue, the account number should be DOT5 instead of 426637. Under appropriate expenditures, it should read Arnold Avenue instead of Calhan Highway. And under county matching funds, it should again read Arnold Avenue instead of Calhan Highway.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak on any item on the consent calendar? Any online? Okay, up here. Any comments?
I will move approval of items 5A through item P6 with the changes as stated by our clerk for item M.
I'll second.
That has been moved and seconded, and again, I will just reiterate, clerical changes to item number N as read into the record. There were no changes to the dollar amounts nor the agencies. It was a correction of the actual name of the project. That has been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The consent calendar passes 5-0. And that brings us to item number 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Are there any countywide elected officials wishing to speak today in the audience or online? Okay, hearing none, I will start with Commissioner Williams.
Good morning. It was a beautiful 4th of July week last week. Happy to celebrate our Independence Day. And I had on Thursday a statewide transportation advisory committee meeting where our region was highlighted. It was very interesting. We have a lot of projects going on, obviously in El Paso County, but our transportation region also includes Park, Pueblo, all the way out to Lamar and down into southeast Colorado. And there's a lot of good projects that CDOT is completing right now. So it was a good meeting and lots of discussion around several items, including some legislative changes that might happen next legislative session. We did have several redistricting meetings for our redistricting commission. Those are going well. And then this week, I have the Pikes Peak RTA on Wednesday down here, and the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments in Woodland Park. And then we have the Boots and Suits at the Pikes Peak Rodeo or Bust on Thursday night. So those are and I have the groundbreaking for the Sunset Amphitheater. One other thing I wanted to comment on, and I know a lot of people have gotten their assessments back, especially in Black Forest, and they believe that they are all over the map. And we did have our assessor come in and update us a few weeks ago on some of the details of how an assessment is made. It is in the time now. You can appeal to the Board of Equalization. I would make sure that you talk with your neighbors who may have gotten theirs lowered to see what the difference is in between your houses. I was talking to someone who lived near Cathedral Pines and had a much smaller home, and it was a manufactured home. And I recommended that she take pictures and bring those in. I don't know if that will help or not. One of the things that I wanted to stress is the county commissioners have no control over assessor law. That is in the state constitution. The state constitution governs the assessor's duties. If we could lower, there was a bill in the state legislative session by Representative Rose Puglisi that would have only increased your house by 10%. That was immediately sent to the Kill Committee by the Democrats in hopes that they could get Proposition HH passed this fall. Please know if we could do that, we would. We cannot change the state constitution. We cannot change laws that the state legislature writes unless it is a specific county responsibility. This one is not one that we can change. So please, I hope that as you appeal, the appeals go well. There are several ways to reduce those taxes, even beginning in January. So know that it's not the end of the road for the tax, for the assessment, but that there are still several more steps. And I just wanted to state that. I know it's important. All of us saw a big increase in our houses. All of us are seeing an increase in our taxes. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of senior citizens on fixed income. It does hit them very hard. There's several exemptions, there's tax abatements. So please take advantage of all the resources available to you during this process. Next year, we'll again go up to the legislature and fight to get something on the ballot that helps us. And we'll keep you aware of those efforts starting in January. But I just wanted to know, I understand, I will respond to all of those emails, but it's not something we have control over. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also had a wonderful 4th of July weekend, did a lot of great things, including participating in the state's largest parade in Monument right here in El Paso County. Also did some mountain climbing, some personal stuff, which I always love doing. I'd like to just add a quick comment to something that Commissioner Williams mentioned, and that's with regard to the mill levies and the property tax assessments and the challenges that we have that were caused by the state legislature by decoupling Gallagher from the Tabor law. That was wise to decouple those two, but nothing was offered to replace it to provide appropriate control over what do you do on tax collection when property home values go up quickly. That was a huge mistake that was overlooked. So there are some legislators at this point calling for a summer state legislative special session to address this before we get into the fall, where people have to start dealing with what their property tax assessments are. I would encourage the state, I would encourage the governor to call that special session and actually complete the work on this particular issue, because if it is not addressed, there are people, they're going to lose their homes because their taxes are too expensive for them to live in. And that is a huge, huge mistake on behalf of the state. So I would encourage the governor to do the right thing, address this issue immediately. And I think the best way to do that is with a special session for the House and Senate in the state. With regard to other meetings, yesterday I participated in, I'm the liaison for El Paso County to the, actually the liaison for CCI, I should say, for the state's Homeland Security Advisory Committee, and wanted to make sure that they were aware of and helping El Paso County with regard to the flooding damage that we have incurred over the last several weeks. For those of you that may not know, that is now at just under $20 million as far as total damage, with a lot of roads washed out in eastern El Paso County, but there's damage across the county. And fortunately, they were well aware of it, and it is on their docket, along with other damages from other counties, to try to address, and I was appreciative that they had that on their list. Also yesterday morning, being the one of the voting members for the Fountain Creek Water District, they held an emergency session yesterday morning to deal with the flood damage that took place down in Pueblo County, just north of the city of Pueblo, on Fountain Creek, just before you get to the Highway 47 bridge, where the riprap was destroyed, and the creek is no longer flowing in the direction that they had set for the stream, and they'd spent something on the order of $5 or $6 million to fix that part of the stream over the last several years, and it's damaged and needs to be repaired. So they were working on how to address that. I did mention to them that there are other counties working on or have already produced emergency declarations like El Paso, and there was a Pueblo County Commissioner in that meeting, and they're going to consider that now in Pueblo as well with that damage. But that's just more of the rain and flood damage that's been caused here in the state. Also, I participated in the National Association of Counties, the FGIPA meeting. This is one of the subcommittees that deals with pensions and finance. And we have a recommended resolution asking Congress to reduce spending so that they can have a balanced budget so that the federal government does not ultimately default on its debts. And that subcommittee, while there was no vote in there, that subcommittee, I reviewed the proclamation, and that subcommittee had no questions. And what that means is that they will be totally supporting it as we go into the NACO National Convention in Austin in a couple of weeks. So that bodes well that we have a reasonable opportunity for the National Association of Counties to take a national position asking Congress to reduce their spending. That resolution also thanks Congress and the administration for making a deal between raising the debt ceiling and reducing some spending, which has already been agreed to. It's just that just is a temporary approach to a bigger and broader problem, and more work needs to be done in that area, and we're asking them to do more. Let's see, tomorrow I'll be participating in the PPACG Board of Directors meeting, and tomorrow is going to be in Woodland Park. That meeting will be in Woodland Park. We started last year a trend to hold at least one meeting every year in each of the 3 counties that participates in PPACG, and it looks like we're going to be continuing that tradition, and I look forward to doing that in Woodland Park. When we did that last year, we got a lot of great feedback from the folks there and really enjoyed talking to the nonprofits in the community there about some of the work that they're doing. Then over the weekend here, I know that one of my fellow commissioners perhaps might talk a little bit more about it, but we have the fair coming up, and I'm looking forward to the VIP reception lunch where we will be announcing some award winners, which I think will be a lot of fun. That will be on Saturday. And then I'll be participating on Sunday in the Fair Queen judging. And I'm really looking forward to that. And then before our next BOCC meeting on Monday, the 17th, we'll have another redistricting meeting along a series of several of these, and that'll be at 9 in the morning on Monday, the 17th. And those are my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll have a PPRTA meeting tomorrow afternoon. I'll be attending various Pikes Peak or Bus Rodeo events this week. I think I'll be going to the rodeo Friday night, and there's one again. Somebody mentioned the business reception there as well. And then going into the weekend, Saturday, the VIP kickoff of the El Paso County Fair, which is a great event. So we'll get to attend various fair events starting this weekend and into next week. Also, a redistricting meeting Monday morning, which would be a change to the normal evening, and have attended various over the last month, and of course had one last night. Actually, a wonderful turnout for District 3. I think all had good attendance, but I think last night outstanding attendance from the community. And then I did want to highlight again wonderful Independence Day celebrations this past week. I attended the Monument Parade. I actually drove in the parade for one of my friends. Attended a barbecue with friends after that, and then I got to enjoy the free Colorado Springs Philharmonic performance. So I always tell people they should definitely get out and enjoy the Monument Parade at least every few couple of years if they don't go every year, and check out the performance from the Philharmonic. It's a free event. You got to register early and get out there early to get your ticket, but it's well worth the attending. And I got to attend the Philharmonic with my sisters who were visiting from California last week, and as it was finishing off our vacation I took. So wonderful time with friends and family, and celebrating the United States of America. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. It certainly seems like there is a lot going on right now. I too enjoyed the Independence Day celebrations, and that is always an encouraging time, I think, to look not only back at the tremendous founding of our nation and the tremendous sacrifices that were made by our founders. Sometimes it's easy to forget in the context of what we are in today that those individuals literally put their lives on the line and took a huge risk. And that is always a somber and, as I said, inspirational time to reflect, especially with the work that we do here in local government. So this week, as has been mentioned, we have the rodeo. I will be participating in PPRTA tomorrow. Also, the CCI legislative discussion. These are all really important discussions as we sadly are thinking about the next legislative session coming up in January. I know it seems early. There's a lot of preparation work that goes into it. So huge shout out and thanks to our government affairs staff for already being on top of that, already having those submissions ready to go for those discussions at CCI. The fair will be kicking off, as was noted. I'll be participating in a media day on Friday, and then I think just about every day out at the fairgrounds participating in some event or another. A couple of things I really appreciate Commissioner Williams' comments on. The concerns over property tax and clarifying some of those issues for our residents. I know that it can be incredibly confusing to understand all the different layers of government and who's in charge of what and who's got the authority to fix what. But I do think that that was a great explanation, and I know that I've received many of those emails as well, and working on getting through those and getting a response to everyone so that they understand the authority that we have and do not have here, and the concerns that we too have. I do want to point out, in addition to the pieces that have been talked about, we have a Tabor cap here in El Paso County, which is not the case in every county, but we do have that. We are still subject to Tabor, and that means that we cannot collect huge increases in funds. That's part of what Tabor was designed to do. And so there will be some relief for residents from that county portion of taxes. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it bears repeating because I know that we have new viewers all the time that tune into these meetings. But we also collect taxes for lots of jurisdictions, and that includes your school district, the library district. Each one of those authorities can collect and change their tax rate. Sometimes it must be done through a ballot measure anytime that they're raising it. But there was a bill passed this last session that allows for those mill levies to be temporarily reduced. But as we said before, it's very complicated. Not all school districts are the same. Some school districts have a dollar amount cap already, and so they will not be able to receive those increases. So why would the assessor's office send out an estimate that isn't accurate, I've been asked? Well, again, all of this is related to state rules and laws and how the assessor has to do their job. So as confusing as it is, I think it's important to continue to repeat the estimates that went out may not reflect what you're actually going to pay, because they are not going to take into account things like reduced mill levies because of Tabor or MLO dollar amount caps and all of those pieces. So the real way to figure out and anticipate is really to get to know all of your local taxing jurisdictions. Go to their website, check out what their specific situation is. Reach out to your officials at those places, your school board members, ask them what kind of increase they are expecting or what they are doing to minimize that impact to voters. So really important issue. And I think I've seen more chatter about this topic on social media and in the public than almost anything I've ever seen as a commissioner thus far. So I know it's a very important topic for many people. Appreciate the comments around the situation with our rain and the disaster declaration as well, since so much of this has impacted my district. We also have individuals. I want to repeat something that's already been said and I continue to put out there, but if you have experienced individual damage that is not covered by your insurance, the Office of Emergency Management is collecting that information. You can go to our website and fill out that information because they continue to collect that to see if the individual threshold is actually being met to where that they would need to seek assistance for folks who have had individual damages. So just a reminder for those folks, I continue to get those emails as well. And as I said, there's so much going on this week, but I do want to mention one other thing that was really concerning to me. There are some law changes. We've talked a lot about public safety and crime. And there have been a few law changes recently, and I think that there was some local media coverage of that is potentially allowing suspected murderers back out on the streets. And I think that this is really a really big concern for all of us. I know that I am going to be talking to both our DA and our sheriff's office about this one in particular, as we're talking about legislative issues and going to the legislative session. This is something that we need to ask our state legislature to deal with. We cannot continue to decriminalize and allow people out that are suspected murderers onto our streets and not expect continued increases in crime. And though those are law changes that have to happen at the state, I'm dedicated to advocating for those changes to keep our citizens safe. And I'm really hopeful that we will have support for that in our area. And with that, I will close.
Thank you. We're full of lots of information this week and commentary and busy schedules. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that that haven't been mentioned, and I too am participating in much of what you have heard by my colleagues. In addition to the county fair opening on Saturday, there is also a ribbon cutting for the small animal barn, which is pretty pivotal to our 4-Hers, our local 4-Hers, having the space and ability to show off their proud work. And I'm excited that has gone soup to nuts in a year. This time last year at the opening of the fair, we broke ground on that building. I understand it's beautiful. Its capacity is what our community needs, and I'm excited to be a part of that in addition to the other activities mentioned at the fair this week. And good luck to all of our local showing 4-Hers. We look forward to seeing many of you make it onto the state fair as well, and either way, we're very proud of your hard work. I will not be in attendance at the Teller County PPACG meeting this week. El Paso County will be well represented by my two colleagues here to my right. I will be, during that time, welcoming a group from Wichita who is visiting with the Chamber of Commerce. And then, let's see, towards the end of next week, I will be departing. Most of us will, I think, for NACO, National Association of Counties. I am a vice chair on the Human Services and Education Committee. Always lots of resolutions and proclamations coming out of that group that I will keep a tight eye on. You've heard a little bit about the assessors and property values and the process for appeals. I wanted to thank one of our many volunteer boards, which is our Board of Equalization. They are at their busiest time over quite a few years right now. So I wanted to thank all of our volunteers who are diligently looking at all of those appeals as they go before that board. And then finally, on the disaster declaration front, I wanted to thank our colleagues in federal positions. Specifically, Senator Hickenlooper is pretty instrumental in advocating for our area and making sure that we're fitting within the FEMA rules that make sense for this. Not exactly a typical disaster because it's a grouping of events as opposed to one single event. So I wanted to thank him for his assistance in navigating the federal emergency management agency's rules and regulations around that and really guiding us through it. And again, that's a regional thing, and I'm ever grateful for our leadership and collaborative effort with the Pikes Peak Office of Emergency Management. And then finally, you may notice just to our left that there's a slightly familiar face to some of you, but Sunny Bryant is our Deputy County Administrator filling in today. But I wanted to give her a little shout out because she's really spearheading our collaborative efforts with the Office of Emergency Management, and I am grateful for that as well. Okay, with that, any other elected official comments? Okay, moving on to item number 7.
Item number 7 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 8.
Item number 8 is, public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to comment on an item that is not on today's agenda. Madam Chair, I didn't have anyone sign in beforehand, but I believe there's at least one person online.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we will lead off today with that one person online. Actually, while we are waiting to get that person back online, are there any members of the audience wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda? Mr. Martinez, please come up and introduce yourself, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Lawrence Martinez, thank you guys for the opportunity to speak today. Usually don't speak very much lately, especially when I say government's doing a good job. But Vice Chair, I give you kudos. You are right. For those for taxes, make sure you do your due diligence in looking where and when and how much you have to pay. Also take a look to see where you can find a corner you can cut to get those taxes done. Also your comment, as well as those who can get bail, especially after a heinous crime. I think it's really sad. I'm hoping that the judges who will put bail on these persons makes it a high cash bail to make sure they stay in. People need to understand that without that done, the county has to take on very many responsibilities, especially monitoring these people, because you do it once, you're probably going to do it again. So kudos to you for what you said, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Are we ready with our person online? Good morning.
Voter. And just to clarify, I called in. I'm not online, so I was waiting to be unmuted. So thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'm forced to take time from my workday to counter some truly ignorant, dangerous, and inaccurate comments from commissioners at last night's redistricting public hearing. At least I can agree with you all that there was a pleasing volume of public participation. The more the better, because democracy dies in the darkness. That said, Commissioner Gonzalez, you dishonored our El Paso County dais with your outright lie, deliberately misrepresenting my factual statement that a white county commissioner does obviously not have the same knowledge as the lived experience of Black and brown people. This is a fact you can't change, no matter how much it pleases your political ideology or how much you don't like it. In fact, it is truly harmful to act as if naming this truth is somehow an affront to or an attack on white people everywhere. You literally looked at your fellow commissioners and said, I'm defending you. From what? The truth? Thanks for confirming what we already know, which is that truth and facts are a great challenge for people affiliated with your party. Also, it is seemingly unethical to criticize and mischaracterize an individual comment when the constituent has no recourse to formally reply in the same meeting. Frankly, I don't know how you sleep at night being this board's token person of color. So I'm here to remind you that status does absolutely not give you the right to lie about what I said as another person of color. I am so deeply sick and tired of this colorblind BS people like you try to perpetuate and weaponize in Colorado. If you don't see color, you don't see me or my community. Know that. Otherwise, another mischaracterization was made last night by Commissioner Vanderwerf when he called a genuine chuckle heckling. Laughter is a
Ma'am,
natural...
your 3 minutes is up.
Have a great day, Commissioners.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, online or in the audience? Okay, hearing none. Item number 9.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up today.
And item number 10.
Item number 10 is a resolution to approve the 2023 Annual Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program. Crystal Latier, Executive Director, Economic Development Department.
Ms. Latier.
Good morning, Commissioners. Crystal Latier, Executive Director of Economic Development here at El Paso County. Thank you to Blake for pulling up the presentation, and thank you to the Commission for hearing this item related to the Community Development Block Grant Program this year. Okay, quick reminder and overview regarding the Community Development Block Grant Program, also known as CDBG. CDBG is a fairly flexible, federally funded program through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. El Paso County became designated an entitlement community in 2009, meaning we receive a direct allocation from the federal government for this program. Why did we become a direct entitlement in 2009? Well, as of 2009, the population outside the city limits of Colorado Springs, but within El Paso County, reached a threshold of over 200,000 people. Of that population, a certain percentage were of low to moderate income. So this program assists populations of low to moderate income. This has been a great change. Prior to 2009, our local community would have to apply and compete at the state level. Having the federal funding administered locally helps with local control, but also allows us to provide great technical assistance to our outlying communities. As mentioned, really the purpose of the program is to provide decent, affordable housing, establish and maintain suitable living environments, and then expand economic opportunities, primarily for residents of low to moderate income. Per HUD regulation, El Paso County develops several HUD-approved long-range strategic plans, the most common one known as the Consolidated Plan. And so that Consolidated Plan is essentially a 5-year strategic plan. We do robust community outreach to survey community needs in the area, prioritizing those community needs kind of in nexus with what is eligible with the program to come up with 5-year goals related to how we will prioritize funding over the next 5 years. So we are here in front of you today because last year we approved a consolidated plan that will go from 2022 through 2026. You'll see there are 10 high priority goals in the categories of housing, homelessness and special needs, and then community development. We receive applications annually and then come to you with annual funding recommendations on how to proceed with that funding. A quick reminder and overview of that application process. As mentioned, we open up a competitive application process annually, and eligible entities are eligible to apply. Those eligible entities would be nonprofits, micro enterprises, or local municipalities within our jurisdiction. We then use a fantastic board of volunteers known as the Community Development Advisory Board. This is a 12-member volunteer board, so you'll denote their great representation on that board. We have a representative from each of the 5 commissioner districts, as well as the 7 participating municipalities. So just wanted to give a shout out to this incredible board that works collaboratively and thoughtfully to provide funding recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on an annual basis. Our chair of the board, Mr. Tyler Stevens, is also in the audience, so thank you to him for his leadership on that board. And then, so we are here today with those funding recommendations. Those funding recommendations are then incorporated into what is known as an annual action plan, how we plan to spend that annual funding for this 1 year, 2023, that is in alignment with those 5-year goals as well as federal regulations of the program. So your funding recommendations for this year, you'll denote, are in 5 different categories. The first one are public service. When we're speaking of public service, we're talking about nonprofit entities that provide typically direct client assistance to folks in need within our community. So you'll see the funding recommendations for public service. It's important to note, per federal regulation, there is a caveat that only 15% of our total grant can be expended in this category. It tends tends to be the most competitive category within the funding application cycle. But as you'll see on the presentation in front of you, we have some thoughtful recommendations for Bring It Home, Freedom Springs. Many of you are familiar with Freedom Springs. That is a permanent supportive housing development for formerly homeless veterans. You'll also denote we have programming that spans many of the needs throughout our community, from domestic violence to youth services, transportation access, senior programming, veteran services, homeless services, and housing and rental assistance. The next category we have recommendations on is public facilities. You'll denote we have several public facilities within our region that are in need of ADA improvements. So great accessibility work happening throughout the region, important aspect of some facility work we're doing. And that work spans everything from the Calhan Housing Authority, which is a public housing authority in the town of Calhan for low-income seniors, to our own Parks Department here, as well as the town of Calhan, Green Mountain Falls, and the town of Rama. And then finally, some final recommendations in regards to the infrastructure and housing category. You'll denote additional ADA improvements from an infrastructure perspective, our largest recommendation being for the Carnegie Library ADA improvements. This is in Manitou Springs. Many of you are aware of that facility, which has been closed down due to the ADA concerns. And then lastly, Brothers Redevelopment is a partner agency that we have worked with for several years. The City of Colorado Springs is now also working with them. Why this is so important is it provides grants to low to moderate income residents who have any emergency health and safety or accessibility concerns with their homes. So this is a great program that really allows folks to age in place as well, which helps with that housing continuum as we continue to talk about affordable housing need in the area. So in summary, please note that we are recommending a total of 17 of the applicants to be funded, denoting a little bit over $1.1 million in funding. And some final funding statistics, our program did receive 26 applications. We are recommending 17 activities for funding. That's a 65% application percentage recommended for funding. The smallest grant being $20,000. The largest grant being $300,000, and the average grant being about $69,000. And I would be remiss if I didn't also give a note of gratitude to our small but mighty team in the Economic Development Office. 3 of our team members are here today, Natasha North, Randy Davis, and Luke Hauser, who work diligently to really assist our community and make sure that our program is as effective and efficient as possible.
And might I add, compliant.
Compliant.
With a lot of federal regulations, and we certainly have some expertise in that. So thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate this. I was on this for a couple of years. Very important board. A great use of funds for all these. I will have. I brought it up a couple weeks ago. One of the organizations concerned me last year. I've supported them in the past greatly. The place do great things. I was concerned. I went to their little fundraiser breakfast under the bridge last year. One of their members, so this is not to say that it was the entire board or the entity at all, but I believe it was the chairperson last year, made some statements that were, I think, divisive, controversial. Don't know why somebody would want to bring controversy when I think as a whole the program is very good. I just want to make sure that funds will not be going. Some of the statements had to do with, again, not trying to delve into controversial aspects, but pro-abortion comments that were out of place for the fundraiser. But I just want to make sure funds that are provided by the county would not be supporting any kind of counseling services, et cetera, as related to abortion.
Okay. And we thank you for bringing that to our attention. Please note that obviously there is a pretty robust and complex process to grant administration. There is an aspect of the program where we actually draft a subrecipient agreement, and so that subrecipient agreement is a grant agreement that says you've been granted this amount of funding for these eligible activities. And please know that these are also reimbursement grants. So we review all of those and see what the activities are before kind of releasing those grant funds. So in regard to those comments, Commissioner Gonzalez, that was not spoken about directly in the application as something that they were seeking funding for, but definitely something we can clarify before releasing any funds.
And thank you. And again, it wasn't the organization, as far as I know, doesn't
Right.
do that in their job. Just somebody brought that up, but it was somebody very high level of the organization. And so it did concern me remembering those comments from last year. And as long as they utilize these funds for their primary purposes, then supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Van der Werf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to, first off, thank the Mayor of Manitou Springs for being present here. John Graham, he's in the audience. Thank you for being here. And it's always wonderful to have elected officials from around the county come and participate or witness some of our meetings. So I appreciate your being here, sir. I also want to thank the team and the hard work that was done. A lot of applicants, always difficult to figure out the best approach on how to make these taxpayer dollars do the absolute most that they can do on behalf of the citizens here. I do appreciate that with regard to public facilities and infrastructure, there's some attention paid on this list to rural parts of the county, including Calhan, Rama, Manitou Springs, and Green Mountain Falls. Particularly as you can see in the list here with regard to ADA accessibility. These are often locations that just don't have the resources available to them to try to get to federal compliance. And I think it's really great that we're able to assist these rural communities in helping them meet those federal compliance requirements. I'm also very grateful for the contribution for the library in Manitou Springs in particular. As a result, if this vote is successful today, we will be a major contributor to that. They have more money to raise, and they are looking at other sources. But if they can deliver that, that'll be really outstanding. And for those that do not know, that particular library does serve as the library for the primary school that's literally right across the street. So it's important to open up that library so that the kids in that school have access to a library, and there is a children's center in there that would be revitalized and so forth. So it's a worthwhile project. So I just appreciate the fact that we're trying to work in providing funding in these rural areas that have trouble funding these federal requirements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. And so I'm going to clarify here. So these are funds that are outside of Colorado Springs.
Correct.
So to Commissioner Van der Werf's point, yes, we are funding, or the recommendation is to fund many of these things and those smaller towns, rural areas, but this money is also required to be spent outside of Colorado Springs. So I think that's important because it ties into one of my concerns about the place that's a little different than Commissioner Gonzalez's, which is it's not outside of Colorado Springs. That continues to be a little bit of a concern for me. I have seen on multiple situations sitting on various grant application boards and things that oftentimes we have these organizations that are inside of the city limits who try to say, oh, well, we're going to serve the rural. And I quite frankly, I'm very concerned about that from, everybody wants to get a little bit more of that government funding. And so that concerns me a little bit on this one. But there's another concern that I'm going to bring up. And that is, I asked a lot of questions about the age ranges of kids who are being potentially served in this by this organization. Because initially it was ages 15 and older, and I'm really concerned about minors interacting, where they're getting information from. So I wanted to point out that I was able to get information, thank you to our Deputy County Administrator, that they are required to contact DHS within 48 hours if they have contact with a minor, which I appreciate. I think that's very important that we don't have minors being served by centers where there's, we're not trying to either get back in contact with a parent or look to DHS and a social worker to figure out what is going on in that situation. So I really appreciate that piece. But I'm going to point out, I continue to be a little concerned in this area, and I want to make sure that as we are talking about these things and looking at the actual reimbursements, what we are putting into place to make sure that these kids are safe. Runaways are a huge place where trafficking happens. That is a well-documented concern that those kids can be preyed upon. Unfortunately, organizations are not immune to that. There are circumstances, and again, I can't speak to what is happening there, so this is more of a preemptive. I'd love to know what we can do to make sure those things aren't happening there. Unfortunately, whether it's drug treatment facilities or jails or anywhere else, we know people will prey on organizations and on people in these situations. So, really concerned about how we are making sure that if those kids are being served, that they are being it's done so safely. So how do we make sure they're contacting DHS? What kind of controls do we have on this situation? Also, because the laws in Colorado are, quite frankly, egregious, and that parents have very little ability to understand what is going on with their minors. So, for example, if a 15-year-old shows up to a runaway shelter, what is this organization prepared to do in terms of trying to get in touch with parents, trying to respect those kind of parental rights? Because in the state of Colorado, they could get medical treatment, including an abortion. They could be counseled to do that and get that without ever notifying a parent, and onward and onward. There's all kinds of potential medical interventions, mental health interventions, which again could be very good and could also be very detrimental depending upon who is delivering those. So I'm really interested in safeguards that we have on those programs to make sure that those things are not happening, that we don't have in what we've had in some states in the United States, even organizations encouraging teens to run away, and so that they can bring them in and administer all kinds of different services that maybe their parents would not be happy with. I don't know if you have an answer on how we can do that in that contract, but it's a really huge concern that I think we should all be aware of.
And thank you for those comments, Commissioner Geithner. If I could address the first part as well, and you mentioned that our program has to be used outside the city limits of Colorado Springs. And that is because the city of Colorado Springs also receives their own CDBG funding. So we can't double dip. City funding is for inside the city, our county funding is for outside. We worked with the place, formerly Urban Peak, for a number of years to ensure that they had an intake and tracking process that would make them eligible for our funding. Essentially, a great way to document that the last known residence of these teens was outside the city limits. And so those provisions are in place. In regards to the concerns that you noted in the latter part of the comments, I will say it is a State Bill 2106 that requires within 48 hours a teen comes, parents or DHS, if for some reason, there's allegations of abuse or something, have to be contacted. So the first aspect is always within 48 hours to work with those parents. If the need arises, DHS also is brought into that. In regard to that, they also have a lot of programming about family reunification. I think that is everyone's, first hope, if that's a safe place. And so spoke extensively with the executive director of the place about State Bill 2106 and how they ensure that those items are being met. But happy to continue to have those conversations and maybe get some other items in writing for you as far as compliance goes in request to that concern.
Thank you for clarifying all of that and letting us all know that you're having those conversations so that we can make sure that we're doing the best to keep our kids safe. I really do appreciate that. Do you have off the top of your head what happens at that 48 mark? Just saying, we just have to notify. So is that we give the parents a call, but this kid could stay here for months? What is the process after that notification happens? Because obviously it's still concerning to have, a minor who has a parent that's concerned, and may have a social worker who says, hey, we understand that your home situation is problematic, but we're going to help you through this. So how long can they end up staying at the place? Or what is that next kind of process to make sure that they're not just kind of hanging out there and not getting the help that they need?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I wish I had more clarification for you today. Unfortunately, I don't. I know they have to have that conversation with the parent and DHS. So I assume if it's a safe place and the parent is engaged with, that is their child, and so they can't hold someone's child. But as far as how that process works with DHS, I would have to get some additional information for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, first I wanted to speak to a few of the organizations here that I really appreciate that we've funded. First, I would like to thank the staff. Thank you. And also the committee members. Thank you, Chair Stevens. I know that they work very hard on this process and review the grant applications very thoroughly, and I really appreciate that. So I do appreciate, first of all, the library money to Manitou Springs. I serve on the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments with Mayor Graham, have great respect for him, and this is a library that is serving a school. The Americans with Disabilities Act does affect a lot of things within the county, from nonprofits. There's a lot of requirements they must meet, all the way to county roads, city roads. As I say, with the City of Colorado Springs 2C money, they come in and it takes them 6 weeks to almost 2 months to get those ADA curbs in. And then the next couple days later, or maybe even a year later, they come in, grind it down, and pave it in 2 days. And so a lot of the cost in the city of the 2C funds seems to go into putting in the ADA improvements for the sidewalks. So anytime you're dealing with making something ADA compliant, it is a frustrating process. It has a lot of requirements. It does cost a lot of money. I am very excited to help the town of Manitou, the city of Manitou Springs, get this library back done, and hope when it's done, even if I'm not serving, I can come and be at the ribbon cutting, because I think that's very exciting. I appreciate the funds to the Fountain Library as well. They're dealing with, and the Pikes Peak Library District, the Fountain branch, they're dealing with ADA improvements as well. The town of Monument has been working hard on getting ADA accessibility through their town in places. I know when we walked in the parade this year, and I will say, I've walked in that parade for 30 years. So whether with a political float or with candidates, such and those kind of things. I hope that there might be a day when I visit my kids on the 4th of July, because I know they don't like to come visit us because they have to walk in the parade with us on the 4th of July. So I appreciate all the town of Monument is doing on the ADA accessibility. Brothers Redevelopment is certainly an organization that's done some really good work. Also, through our Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, we see MVITA a lot doing area agency on aging stuff for transportation. They're doing a fantastic job at that. And then the Freedom Springs for serving our homeless veterans, as well as the Calhan senior housing. We appreciate all of those. So I appreciate the committee evaluating all of these grant applications. I know it's a lot of work. I know that after we approve these, there's a lot of management that goes into that. There's a lot of federal requirements, and we are federally compliant.
Yes.
So following all those federal requirements takes time and a lot of detail work. And I appreciate that. So thank you very much to all of the work of the committee.
Thank you.
Excellent. With that, are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Any of our CDAB board members? Okay, anyone online? Okay, with that, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Actually, Madam Chair, I did want to mention one thing. So for transparency purposes, I am on the board of Mount Carmel. So I just wanted to state that, but I had absolutely nothing to do with their application process, nor of the review of the application. And I feel very comfortable being able to vote on this.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Yes. Okay. So as the commissioner who is the liaison, I will move to approve the 2023 annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program.
I'll second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. Any other comments from commissioners?
Yes, so before we move to an approval on this, I really appreciate the answers that we've gotten thus far, but I'm going to ask that there are some provisions put on, I mean, we're talking about contracting down the road, but this board doesn't have the ability to deal with that. And so I would be open to suggestions from the county attorney on the best way to do this. I'm okay with funding the place, but not without putting some sort of guardrail up to make sure that those things happen. So for example, as I talked about, because minors have the ability and could be influenced by someone, you know, when they are in a runaway situation, a very vulnerable situation, I would not be willing to move forward and fund that and vote for that particular, unless we have something specific, and whether that needs to be a condition or something. Again, I'll lean on the county attorney for help on exactly the way to make that happen. But to make sure that well, first of all, I'd like clarification on, you know, we're assuming that they can't keep people's children, but unfortunately the laws in Colorado are not at all respective to parents' rights at all. So I would want some clarification that we can make sure that's happening, and that there would not be counseling or attempts to help procure any kind of non-emergent medical decisions or anything of that sort, so that we are not putting kids in situations where they are ending up making decisions that they're really not prepared to make. So that would be something that I would want to make sure of. And I don't know what the best way to do that is from this process, but that would be my only that would be the only way that I would feel like we could actually protect these kids and make sure that that decision is respected when we move forward out of this board.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. And I'd also like to support Commissioner Geithner's interest in that as well. Kind of just speaking in general terms, I think it's essential, really essential, that for anybody who is a minor, that every effort is made to make sure that the parents are contacted, involved. I know there's work in that arena, but it's really, really important, because if we get into a place where that is not done, and then something is done with that child, there's a possibility of that later being construed as child abuse. And we do not want to be part of child abuse later on. So it's really, really important. And if there's something about being estranged from the parents for one reason or another, maybe the child was being abused by the parents, so then they have some other type of legal guardian, an appropriate legal guardian, then that needs to be the person involved if the person is in fact a minor. So that is really also important to me. So I do think that exactly how that would play out or what it would need to look like, I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think it is important that we have something about that involved in this program to make sure that we have some protection for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. County Attorney, do we need a brief recess to discuss options? With that, I am going to recess, and we'll see if we can't get some answers and make sure we're dealing with this today.
Thank you.
Recess. I will call this Board of County Commissioners meeting back to order. And we were in discussion on item number 10, resolution to approve the 2023 annual action plan for Community Development Block Grant Program. And I'm going to, there was a motion and a second on the table. There was further discussion and commentary from commissioners, and I believe Commissioner Williams wanted to offer some comments.
Yes, I'm going to withdraw my motion and see if we have a different motion that might work better.
And as a consequence of that, I'll withdraw my second.
So procedurally, the original motion to approve has been withdrawn. Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. And I want to say a thank you to my colleagues for being sensitive to the concerns for our kids and our community. Crystal, could you bring back up the slide that is that category, that first category of thank you. So I would like to make a motion to remove the place and redistribute the $20,750 equally amongst the other grantees in this category. Again, because we can't guarantee that our kids who are entering into this program would be kept safe, in my opinion, from any of those situations based on how this process has to work. I would prefer to not fund the program than get into a situation where we can't make sure kids are safe in this program and are looked out for by guardians that are looking out for their best interest. So that's my motion, and if there's any clarification needed, please let me know, but I think it's pretty clear. And otherwise, it would be to approve the remainder of the plan with that change.
I will go ahead and second. I think we do want to have some discussion, though, with the one question is that this is the only organization that falls into our plan to address teenagers. Is that correct?
Correct. There are no other teenage type services. And are you speaking in regards to how it aligns with goals or?
Yes, how does it align with the goals?
Sure. So this would really be considered something that is ensuring the homeless and special needs, making sure that's brief, rare, and non-recurring.
Commissioner Geithner.
I'm going to question whether that even fits in there. Minors cannot be homeless. They are either living with their parents or they get DHS involved. That's a specific government responsibility because we have a lot more oversights in that situation. So I would say there is a mechanism in place, and that is that we have social workers who are highly trained in this that have to follow a whole lot of other rules and steps. So I'm not even sure that I would agree that it, for those minors in particular, maybe those over 18, but I'm not even certain that I would agree that because the government does not allow minors to be homeless. There are steps and provisions in place for that.
Is this goal set out by the federal government or is this created by our committee?
Yeah, great question. So it's kind of a combination. So these are goals after we surveyed community needs, things happening in our community that we would like to address that are also part of the eligible activities under the CDBG program. So we have kind of 5 years that we report back, the 2022 through 2026, and each year there's another plan because there's lots of plans when you're doing federal grant administration known as a CAPER, a Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. So at the end of each program year, we report back on all of those items that we just funded, how those performed and how they helped meet some of these goals. So that to say, we can meet goals in other years of our plan, if that makes sense. So if we aren't approving this today and we're not meeting that goal with that item, perhaps next year we have another homeless project that we recommend and approve for funding that helps us meet that goal.
Commissioner Gonzalez, I have a quick question, and then I'll acknowledge you for your comments. Do we have a historical perspective of these fundings going to this organization and how they've utilized them in the past?
Yeah, great question. We do. And so the place has been a recipient in the past and has performed well as far as compliance, reimbursement requests, reporting. They've always done a great job with that aspect of it. Also keeping in mind, I know we've discussed this at a different time, we have an internal rule for this category and this category alone under public service, nonprofit work, that the same agency could only receive funding for 2 years in a row before we ask them to take a 1-year waiting time frame, just to ensure they're not becoming dependent upon federal resources, which may or may not continue to come our way. So the place has been past recipient, and it wouldn't have been for the entirety of the program since we have that rule, but they have been on and off a recipient and done well with reporting and compliance.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so my question relates to, because I was not involved in the conversation before on the renewed motion. So were we unable to determine whether we could at any point find some road guards to this, or was it something we weren't sure we could do today? If it was something that's just like, well, we're not sure we can get the road guards in place today, then maybe the better move was approve the others, take another vote for a separate day on the 20,000. If the comments through the attorneys and everything so we don't think we can get those road guards in place at all, then I understand the distribution. So I was not, again, privy to the conversation, so I don't know what the difference is, if you understand my question.
Can I ask our county attorney to clarify what, if any, guardrails can be put on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think a couple of things are up for the board's consideration on this topic. The first one is under state law, there are certain types of care that minors can seek. A couple of trigger ages are 12 and 15. That being said, as far as what is funded, there are mechanisms for the county to be able to basically ensure that funding is spent on what was intended under our recipient agreement, and that is something that I can work with staff on. That being said, I think that the caveat is that state statute does grant minors at ages, again, 13 and 15, as well as generally emancipated minors with certain rights to seek certain types of care, and we would not be able to get into that. It would be privileged.
Commissioner Gonzalez, did that adequately answer your questions? Commissioner Geithner.
So we're going to get down in the weeds on this one, but the reality is, while we don't have to reimburse them, it doesn't stop any of those things from happening. So we could have a child and we could reimburse for those funds, and that doesn't mean that they still would not be put in a situation where they are be counseled or do any of those other things. That is the danger of putting minors into a situation like this. I just cannot agree that putting minors into a situation, and we have the reality is we have no idea what could be going on with those minors. I would prefer to not have that place and have to route them through DHS and other secure channels where we know that they're not going to be pushed into situations or exploited. There's no way for us to ensure that children would not be exploited by just giving this money and saying we're only reimbursed for these things, but we have no idea what else is going around with this child in the meantime. That is, unfortunately, I have seen far too many government programs, and I can give an example of something that's very minor, but it means the best of intentions when we vote for something and it comes out being something completely different. And I personally would not be able to sleep at night knowing that some child could be exploited through a process like this, not with the intention of this board, but because it just leaves the door open. So for example, the state passed teen crisis funding a couple of years back. What that has turned into is posters showing up at every school in El Paso County and around the state saying things like parents care about all the wrong things. It was an exploitation of public funding that was supposed to be made for crisis intervention for teens. It sounded like a really good thing, but what it was turned into is weaponized against families and parents. And in this case, I can't say it will happen, but I certainly can't protect against it, because though we wouldn't fund those things specifically, that doesn't mean that in the midst of that program, they couldn't be subjected to that. So this is an area I'm incredibly passionate about. We are absolutely destroying families and parent rights in the state of Colorado, and I cannot give funding to a situation where I cannot ensure that we won't have that situation. It is not as if we are leaving 15-year-olds to fend for themselves. There are programs in place and there can be help. They can do that through DHS, which I feel much more confident is likely to have more safeguards in it. And so for that reason, I cannot agree to funding that cost. It's not, if we were saying, gosh, 15-year-olds are out on the street if we don't do this, but I do not think that that is the reality. And so I truly cannot, would not be able to sleep at night thinking that we could leave children vulnerable to these situations. So I don't think that there are guardrails that can be put on that would, from the conversations that we've had and the advice from the county attorney, that would put me in a place to feel like we could make sure that they couldn't be exploited in that situation. And I would prefer to not fund it than to leave it open for that exploitation. So the only other compromise that I could offer, which is not my preference, but I would be open to, is saying that if we can make it so that the contract, it can only be 18 and older, because I am not going to allow for children. I just can't do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Geithner. So that was actually going to be my next question, is fill us in a little bit on the application process in terms of the defined scope, and if a change in scope, what that would trigger procedurally, and on the contracting end.
Yeah, great question. So obviously, we denoted that there's always more need than resource, right? So $20,000 was not their initial request. This was something a little less than they requested. There have been times in the past where we can put provisions within a subrecipient agreement to denote you can be reimbursed for kind of like this instance when we said clientele only who live outside the city limits, clientele who resided only outside the city limits and of this age. So we could work with the place to see if that's something doable within this amount of money as well. Just procedurally, once this is approved, how that works within our office is all of the applicants are either given a notice of award or denial of funding. The notice of award says you may be getting funds. There are a lot of other hoops we have to jump through, and that includes federal approval, that includes executed legal agreements, that includes environmental reviews. So they could be given a notice of award with those stipulations and work with the county attorney's office to have those stipulations within their contract so that they could only ask for reimbursement of staff time for staff that worked with youth of a certain age.
And it does say on their website that they build relationships with 15 to 24-year-olds. And so we could limit it so that they're only working with 18 to 24 or 19 to 24.
And I don't think we can limit the organization and their mission. What we can limit is what we will reimburse for the direct services.
I might be more comfortable if an organization in the future, such as, I don't know if Springs Rescue Mission deals with anyone under the age of 18, since we have DHS on site. And did you say we funded them in the past?
The place,
Yes.
we have.
And is this their second year of funding that we'd be giving?
I would have to double check if they received funding. They have an open project right now. I don't believe so. They were not funded in 2022. But our program's been going on since 2009. So in between 2009 and 2023, they have been funded in the past.
Okay.
Commissioner Geithner.
I just will make, past funding, and I understand all those questions, and, this is where I am today, and I wanted to point out that a lot of these laws changed this last legislative session.
Correct.
And that is a huge, a jump that is changing the way and some of the things that I've seen with what is happening to our kids is a why. So I say that not to be argumentative here with my colleagues, but just to give frame of reference for why it's more important to me this year than ever before.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Yes,
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to say I consider it unfortunate that the state has enacted laws that allow minors to make decisions for themselves because we all know it just seems to me at younger ages we sometimes are not in a good place to be making good decisions, particularly kids that are under stress. That's what parents are for. That's what a guardian is for. That's what human services is for, is to help those kids work through some of their crises and so forth. I just feel I'll just tell you I feel strongly about that because if we're not supporting parental engagement in their children, we are, I hate to say it, we're contributing to the destruction of the family at that point. So I'll tell you that I am willing to support the amendment and the second as it stands. I think that this place does provide some good services, but I can see how we could get into a situation that would be a challenge here. But there's always the opportunity the following year. Maybe we can see if there's a way to legally put in guardrails that we would be comfortable with. But so what I'm willing to do and what I'm willing to vote for is the current motion and the second. And then we can just have a re-engagement and see what's possible for next year's round.
Any other comments? To clarify, there is Commissioner Williams withdrew her first motion, and there is another motion put forth by Commissioner Geithner to remove the place and redistribute that $20,750 amongst the other recipients. And so that has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner Gonzalez.
I like Commissioner Vanderwerf's comments about potentially continuing to engage and, if there's any guardrails that can be added, perhaps there's something I can do next year for guardrails for any of the concerns that were brought up here today. Thank you.
And then I think, this has been a robust and good and very deep and thoughtful discussion. And I am sure that that our citizens serving on the CDAB also had pretty deep discussions about this as they evaluated the applications. I have one other quick clarifying question. If you go back to the goals and strategies, that one right there. Technically what is on here is approving the annual action plan. And in no way by doing this newly proposed motion are we changing the overall intent and overview, correct?
Correct.
Okay. With that, I will call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I want to make a quick follow-up comment because I really appreciate what Commissioner Brummer said about the CDAB group and the hard work that went in there. And I don't want to minimize that in any way. I agree. Those are my thoughts exactly. But it's one of the great things about having this board. We all have very different experiences. Many of the members on that board may not even be aware of these law changes. And so it doesn't, to me, diminish the work that they have done at all. I think that they did a fantastic job. But we sometimes have a different perspective from the work that we do up here, and that's what I viewed this as. So I want to say thank you, Crystal, to you and your team and the board for the advisory board for all of the work that went into this. It is, you guys have done a fantastic job, and I don't want this, those comments to diminish what work has been done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just comment, my frustration does lie with the state legislature. Taking parents out of these decisions. Also, I would prefer to see someone like the Life Network apply for this. I will not support, the counseling for abortion in minors. That is because my husband has a 15-year-old mother who gave him up for adoption. And that was a very brave decision at her time in that life. And now that we have been able to reconnect with her, she's so glad she made that decision. And I disagree with the state legislature when they say, well, you can only get counseling from Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood doesn't offer necessarily, to my belief, both sides of the story. And that there actually is a beating heart, and that baby can be put up for adoption, that they can work with family members, moms and dads, to help find another family member who will raise that baby. I think there's a lot of different options that need to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some final comments too. I think that, we were essentially, today's actions were precipitated by feeling uncomfortable in our ability to really set parameters and guardrails that are in line with what we've done a tremendous amount of thinking about, how do we protect those most vulnerable in our community. And I would say that that while we didn't feel comfortable in our ability to do it through this program, through this particular funding, and however, we do have within our purview of control is ensuring that our Department of Human Services can fill that gap and can fill that need, and that is currently in our purview right now. So I would just ask my colleagues to kind of double down on particularly a group that perhaps is underserved, and we could probably do a better job of ensuring that that those children are protected in that way when they are within the purview of what we do get to manage on a day-to-day basis and we are responsible for. So great discussion today. Thank you very much to your whole team. Item number 11.
Item number 11 is Annexation Impact Report, Monument Ridge East and West. Acknowledgement of an Annexation Impact Report for the Monument Ridge East and West annexation. Pursuant to state statute, the Board of County Commissioners does not approve or deny an Annexation Impact Report. The report provided by the Town of Monument notifies the county of the annexation request and describes potential impacts in very general terms. The 160 acres is currently zoned RR5, residential rural, RS 20,000, residential suburban, PUD, planned unit development, C1, commercial, CS, commercial service, and CC, commercial community, and is located south of and abutting County Line Road between Beacon Light Road on the west and Misty Acres Boulevard on the east. The annexation is scheduled to be heard before the Monument Board of Trustees on July 17th, 2023. Parcel numbers 71022000015, 71022000014, 71022000013, 71022000019, 71022000008, 71022010001, 71022000006, and 71022000010. Commissioner District 1 and ANX 22-008. Kylie Bagley, Planner 2, Planning and Community Development.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kylie Bagley with Planning and Community Development. I'll be giving a brief presentation on file Annex 22008 titled Monument Ridge East and West Annexation. Jeff Rice with the Public Works Department was the senior engineer who reviewed this annexation. So El Paso County received an annexation impact report for roughly 160 acres to be annexed from El Paso County into the town of Monument. As you can see here on the screen in the black is the outline of the subject property. So the subject property abuts and is south of County Line Road between Beacon Light Road on the west and Misty Acres Boulevard on the east. And then it does incorporate some parts of I-25 down south as well. This is just a close-up, and I'll go ahead and get this bigger so you can see it, of the portion of the annexation that is going to be east of I-25. So it shows all the parcels that it will encompass. And then you can see right here, this parcel is not within that annexation request. And then again, this just shows the parcels west of I-25 and then includes that portion of I-25 to the south. Again, the annexation request will be heard by the town of Monument on July 17th. Oh, I apologize. There should have been a slide for the county attorney. I'm going to invite the county attorney down and pull up her slide real quick as she gets ready. So Lori Segal.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Segal, Senior Assistant County Attorney. I was asked to just briefly address you regarding the county's authority when it comes to the annexations of municipalities within the county. And those authorities lie within state statute in Title 31, Article 12, as well as your Land Development Code. And they are very minimal. The annexing municipality, in this case, the town of Monument, is required to file an annexation impact report with the Board of County Commissioners of the relevant county, which they have done in this case and which staff has evaluated for you. That is their only requirement with respect to the board. And then the board has the option pursuant to your Land Development Code to make comment, if you wish, on that annexation report and provide written comments back to the town. You also have the authority to authorize a staff member to address the public hearing for annexation at the town of Monument and provide whatever comments the board might direct. But the Board of County Commissioners has no authority to in any way impede, obstruct, or disapprove a proposed annexation. Any questions?
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that, and well aware of the statute and the town of Monument, can proceed, and appreciate also that we're being informed of it. And they do have minimal requirements to inform us, and as you mentioned before, what they're required to do. Of course, we had some of those challenges, particularly with the bigger annexations from the city of Colorado Springs, and then we negotiated an annexation agreement with the city of Colorado Springs, which I really like because it does a lot of earlier notification from both parties involved about annexation, and that allows for example, the county to do a little bit more planning about infrastructure and road repair and maybe provide input to the city. So I recall when we did that annexation agreement, we were contemplating the idea of similar annexation agreements with the other municipalities in El Paso County. So did we ever proceed with that with any of the other municipalities, or did we just not get there, in this case, not get there with Monument? Just wondering where we are with that.
I'll defer to Ms. Harrington.
Maybe we aren't anywhere with it.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Harrington, Planning Director. So I do remember that there are conversations with the other municipalities related to that IGA. However, the county did not move forward with setting in place that similar IGA with the other municipalities. We can certainly do that. However, I will tell you that all of the municipalities are sending us early notification of the annexation. So we are our department receives review when those applications are submitted. Staff is sending comments, working with the municipalities outside of that intergovernmental agreement that we have with the city of Colorado Springs. So a similar process is occurring. We can certainly move forward and approach those municipalities about a more formalized IGA if that is the intention.
I guess maybe just as a quick follow-up, if the other municipality, my sense of it is, if the other municipalities are giving us early notification, I think that just simply is a statement that they're being good partners with us and so forth. And I think that was really the need for the one with the city of Colorado Springs, is that sometimes we were being notified with like 7 days notice. And then we had in place, in some of those cases, pretty extensive Department of Public Works infrastructure projects that caused us to jump through hoops because things were going to get changed. So as long as we're getting early notification, I don't know how essential that is. I'd be interested in hearing from the other commissioners. I did have one other question, though, and that was that little tiny section that apparently is not going to be annexed on one of those other maps, and what was the reason why they were going to produce an enclave inside an annexation? At least that's what I thought I saw.
I think that's owned by a church.
I believe that's a separate ownership. The owner of the 160 acres is the same owner other than this particular piece. I don't believe is the same ownership. Other than that, staff doesn't have any other information. I don't know if that owner approached, if the owner of the annexation area approached that outlying parcel owner about annexation. None of that was mentioned.
Okay.
Yes, and this map is going up north, right?
Yes, this map is going up north. County Line Road is on the top of this map.
Yes, because I drove down Beacon Light, and I think that parcel might be owned by a church.
Okay.
So.
And Commissioner Vanderwerf, we will continue to work with the other jurisdictions. Just so the board is aware, I meet with all of the planning directors on a quarterly basis, all of the local municipal planning directors, including the city of Colorado Springs, Monument when they have a planning director in place. And so we are coordinating with them quarterly, and we have been asked to participate with the city of Colorado Springs with Annex COS when that process gets up and running. Staff will be a part of their technical review committee. We'll keep an eye on that, and if there are any issues, then we will be sure to approach the municipalities about a more formal process.
Great, thank you. If that's producing early notification so that we can kind of plan accordingly with DPW and other parts of the county, that's good. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I have a couple comments. So the first on the annexation agreement with the city. With the increase in utilities cost to annex into the city, and I think their political action committee has also proposed an additional increase. I just want to make sure, and I will cover my bases out in the community on this, that it's not increasing our cost of housing to require those within the close annexation, within the 3-mile radius, to have to ask the city if they want to be annexed, or to ask the city about their development plans, because I just want to make sure it doesn't increase the cost of housing, because I don't think the city's taking on that much more anymore. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one involves, and if Jeff or Josh could come back and go back a few slides to the better slide, which was the color one. The right-of-way, and this would be the only instruction I would want to have to the property owner or to the town of Monument. We're getting ready to do Beacon Light Road, which I believe is the red road right in there. Is that right?
Jeff Royce with Engineering. Beacon Light is actually along this,
Oh, there's
notice to the
Beacon
left
Light.
on here, so it's on the top of where the black line is on this image here. The I-25 is the red line on this map.
So they're annexing on both sides of I-25.
Correct. But they
Okay.
aren't annexing Beacon Light Road. It goes just to their property line on
And
that
they
side.
didn't annex the campground. That's interesting. So the Beacon Light Road, we're getting ready to do a lot of work on with the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, and it's still a dirt road. The east side of the road probably has some pretty significant right-of-way issues, since sometimes you're driving by a little mound of dirt that's, sometimes the properties are up 6 feet. Are we maintaining that right-of-way so that we can get Beacon Light done without having to negotiate for property?
I'm not sure about the exact details. I know there is property
Josh is
acquisitions in
right there.
process. So,
Yeah. So, because I asked that last week of them, because I'm just worried about, with the cost of properties and negotiating with these property owners, if we could get some of that right-of-way, or recommend to the owner of the property that we get the right-of-way.
So, Josh Palmer, County Engineer. Good morning. As it stands right now, this owner may be one of the impacted property owners that we may require some sort of right-of-way. It's probably going to be very minimal, though, in the form of permanent easements or things like that. So there may not be a significant property take that would be required. However, we are doing a couple of minor design revisions, vertical alignment corrections that may further decrease the amount of property that may be required. There's multiple property owners up there, and we're doing our best to try to mitigate impacts as much as possible. So we're working on a couple of redesign efforts right now that could hopefully further reduce the need for some of the right-of-way. But as it stands right now, they would be one of the property owners that would be asked to, hopefully in a perfect world, maybe donate, if donation is out of the question, participate in good faith negotiations for some possible property acquisition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Williams, there is an annexation agreement that does have some language in it related to this property owner's requirement for improvements to Beacon Light Road. They're also going to request of the town of Monument a special district. If this goes through, they would be requesting of the town of Monument a special district, and they will also need to plat the property in the future. So these are all steps along the entitlement process that the county will be, again, receiving that early notification. We'll be working with the town. If right-of-way is required, those are times in that process that we would request that right-of-way be dedicated to the county for that right-of-way. And the property owner also does know that there could be a requirement through the future processes to dedicate that right-of-way for Beacon Light Road.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to have a motion to accept this, or just?
Commissioner Geithner, did you have further comments?
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I really appreciate the process today. As I think we are all very aware of the statute and how it works with towns and cities who want to do annexations. I really appreciate the extra transparency and trying to make sure that the public understands this concept of annexation and what we actually can and cannot do. And so I wanted to thank the staff for their diligence on that. And I wanted to ask, I guess both Megan and Josh, we know that this is a report that comes to us, that we have the opportunity to make comments back just for the awareness of the town of Monument and that jurisdiction. Is there anything glaring on this? And as we're talking about that property, I appreciate that was pointed out, that kind of piece that is not being included. Is there any potential problems that we are seeing with the way that this is currently drawn out, that would, just kind of give a red flag that, hey, this could create a problem for us down the road?
Again, for the record, Megan Harrington, Planning Director. I'll let Josh address if there's any infrastructure-related issues. Something that you could be hearing about, though, more in the general realm of the land use, is that the Monument Planning Commission did hear this item, I believe, last week. While the annexation impact report that you consider here today is asking for a zoning that would allow them to do townhomes and perhaps something denser than single-family residential, that is the request of the property owner. The Planning Commission, however, when they voted to recommend approval of the annexation, it also went along with a zoning, and the Planning Commission changed that zoning. They are making a recommendation to the town trustees that the zoning be more of a rural residential zone district and not what the property owner had requested of the town. So moving forward, when the Monument Board hears this item, the owner will still be requesting that original denser zoning than the Planning Commission had recommended, and that will be a conversation for the town. And I believe the owner is having a follow-up neighborhood meeting this Thursday to have that discussion with the citizens that were in opposition to the original zone district. So there's a little bit of a discussion on what the town of Monument will adopt as far as land use goes for this property. While perhaps not directly the question that you asked when we're thinking about big items that you could hear about, that conversation and what the development will look like in the town of Monument is, in the planning world, probably a big conversation the board will have.
Commissioner Geithner.
If I could just ask a follow-up, Megan, appreciate all the context of that. That's obviously can be, as we know, a huge problem for a developer if they have, looked at a situation where they feel like they can accommodate cost, right? So is there any indication that if it is not approved with the zoning that they're requesting, that this could actually be withdrawn?
Commissioner Geithner, I did not get a feeling of that. My information is just coming from talking to the monument planning staff and just following a little bit of what's occurred with this annexation. I believe that the property owner would still move forward with some type of land use, and part of their property is zoned in the county as PUD, which does allow a smaller lot size than what the Planning Commission for the Town of Monument recommended as the land use. So I guess we'll see what happens next week with the Town of Monument, and if there's any major changes that the board needs to be briefed on, we in the planning department here for the county will make sure that we brief you on that.
Thank you.
Good morning. So I don't see any immediate impacts related to the completion of the Beacon Light Road project. One of the things that we may run into long term, and we see this frequently across the county, is as we piecemeal annexation out of the county to whatever other agency. And as Megan mentioned, zoning often changes at some point. We have increased expectations for public maintenance, road maintenance, inclusion of sidewalks, trails like that. So somewhere that is very rural now, as zoning changes and the density increases for residential or commercial use, oftentimes the expectation for maintenance and public improvements increases as well. So in my opinion, I believe this may be a benefit because we've been in regular discussions with the Town of Monument regarding them taking ownership of Beacon Light. They own a portion much further south, and it makes logical sense that we continue that ownership all the way to Caliana Road. I think this may be kind of a net positive that would help encourage the Town of Monument to consider annexation of the road itself. So as expectations increase, it often makes sense for the for the agency that owns the parcels outside of the road to also include the roads as well. So I think this may be a long-term benefit to work with the town of Monument. But immediately, I don't see any issues with the completion of the road.
Josh, sorry, just one more statement. I wasn't fast enough. So if ultimately they annex Beacon Light Road, since we've paid up in that area, the residents have paid for 20 years taxes to get this road built. We would still build it, or they would take over the management of the building, but we would still pay for it because that's the Pikes Peak RTA project.
Yeah, you're correct. We would follow through on our commitment to complete the construction of the road, and I think that's also usually a very good bargaining tool. You know, you complete and you hand over a newly completed road, nice and black.
And then we can turn the road over to
then
them
you
for
can turn the road
maintenance.
over. You know, it's similar to what we've done in other negotiations. You know, with the Park Vista is a recent one we did with the city of Colorado Springs. We support the necessary improvements, and then they get a relatively new product that is now part of their agency. So, yeah. So we would follow through on our commitment. The road be constructed. We're pretty close now to getting to construction anyway, so there's no turning back.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so that was my only reference. So we don't approve or disapprove these. We can accept or make comments. And so I just want to make sure that the comment that our improvements would be, our comment is that expectation of Monument taking over or accepting the roads once we've completed our PPRTA improvements. Is that a statement included, or can we just include that today? Because I would like that statement to be included.
Well, I would say, in my opinion, it's up to you what you would like to include as far as statement. I don't think, and Megan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that condition is in any way tied.
It's not a condition, but we are allowed to make statements, include statements as part of our acceptance, or make comments to. I want to add a comment that the county has an expectation or want Monument to take over the road that we will be completing once it's completed.
I think we would happily encourage them to take it over.
So staff will make that as part of your acceptance of the annexation impact report and your ability to make those comments. Staff will ensure that we relay that information to the Monument staff to put that on record, that the Board of County Commissioners has the expectation related to Beacon Light Road. So we will make sure that comment and any other comments you make as you're moving your motion forward is forwarded on to staff and made part of that record.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, is there anyone in the audience here to speak on this item? And anyone online? Okay, hearing none. Given our limited scope on ability to do any formal action on this, do we need a formal action to accept it?
No, Madam Chair, you do not. Direction to staff can, and I believe has been given by direction from the dais today.
Thank you. Direction has been given with input from various commissioners. Thank you. Item number 12.
Item number 12 is application by Maverick Inc., DBA Maverick Store number 494 to renew the fermented malt beverage and wine off-premises liquor license located at 2477 Peterson Road. Commissioner District Number 2, Bridget Rowe, Clerk to the Board Specialist. And Madam Chair, at your discretion, I'll just read a little bit of background on this, and then I think we have Leslie Eiding online to speak for the licensee. Great. So the licensee received a state violation of the liquor code on June 21st, 2022 for sale to an 18-year-old Liquor Enforcement Division underage purchaser. Therefore, the licensee is not eligible for administrative approval by the clerk to the board. The applicant has met all statutory and policy filing requirements, and no additional adverse comments have been received from the sheriff's investigator. The individual is cited for the selling, serving, giving, or procuring of an alcohol beverage to an 18-year-old Liquor Enforcement Division underage purchaser on June 21st, 2022, is no longer employed at the business.
Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this matter being up for renewal, today the board's options are essentially to grant or deny renewal. My understanding from previous matters similar to this one are that that involve the licensee having been penalized at the state level and the employee no longer working at the premises is typically renewal is granted.
And is there a representative of the applicant here today? They're online.
Yes, I'm online.
Hi there.
Hi.
Do you have any comments that you would like to add to what has been previously presented?
Yes, along with that employee no longer being here, we have recertified all training through computer-based training throughout the store and throughout the leadership team. And we do have a new leader in place at that location.
Okay. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Vanderwerf for the applicant who's online. I, in fact, was intending on asking a question, and that was about recertifying and also making sure that there's training in place so that the employees are well aware about the challenges they have with selling to minors and so forth, or people that are otherwise not allowed to purchase liquor. But I think I actually heard you answer that in your comments. So I just want to make sure, maybe just reiterate it. You've got procedures in place so that the employees are well aware of who they're allowed to sell to and who they're not allowed to sell to, and you have maybe some kind of periodic retraining to remind them of that. Is that correct?
That is correct. And other procedures we have in place besides the recertification are scanning IDs on the register as well.
Thank you very much. That's my only question.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Geithner.
Okay, this is in my district, although it is disappointing to see one of those violations. There is never a situation where any employer can control 100% of their employees, and it seems to me that the corrective actions have been taken and parameters put in place to ensure the future safety of our community. So I am in support of this, and I would make a motion to approve item 12.
Second.
That has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Okay, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That item number 12 passes 5-0. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
You too. Item 13 has been withdrawn for today. Item 14.
Item number 14 is department and committee reports and non-action items, and there are none.
Item 15.
Item 15 is the addendum, and there is no request for an addendum.
Item 16.
Item number 16 is the executive session, and there is no request for an executive session.
We are adjourned.